Brian Caldwell from Triple C, a newly branded but certainly established dispensary in the Northwest in the Seattle area. Known Brian for a while, and it's a wonder why we haven't sat down until now, but had a good conversation, and hope you enjoy. So, Brian Caldwell, somehow, you and I have spoken often, been together many times. You've never been on the podcast here.
I've never been that lucky. Now I am.
And here we are. So, Brian Caldwell, Triple C, Washington State. Everything's smooth sailing in Washington State, as always, right?
Yeah, you could play it that way. That's a good way to go. It's definitely politically correct.
So it is December of 2015. What's your kind of state of the industry type of thing before we get going here?
State of the industry. We have to be driving towards standards as an industry. We also have to be driving towards good labor components, so paying our employees properly, good health benefits, retirement. We got to show that we're a mature industry. And I think beyond that, diversity in the industry. Those are, it's not what we're necessarily doing, but that's where we need to move to. And as we look back on the year, these are three main things that have popped up over the year. And I think we're going to see a lot more in those three areas come 16.
Absolutely, and more states are going to come on board no matter what kind of thing. But what about Washington, state of the industry, Washington specific?
Washington specific. Well,
it's a harder question.
Yes, definitely. We've got some challenges with converting the medical operators over. Legislation from last year was challenging to say the least. We need to make sure we have patient access, and right now, I think patient access is restricted a lot more than it should be. Beyond that, recreational is obviously booming. There seems to be more and more medical shops closing down because of local ordinances. And so, at the end of the day, we have to focus on patients. We have to focus on professional, industry professionals, and making sure everybody's doing everything right.
But just get into that just one level deeper, the 502 medical kind of picture.
And explain what you're looking for there.
So what I'm looking for is, whatever you feel like sharing as far as, the differences between the two programs.
Okay. So 502 is extremely regulated. Liquor and Cannabis Board, overseeing them, enforcing them. There's some inconsistencies with the oversight by them, and we look forward to seeing it become more consistent. And when you talk medical, there is a medical law that has recently passed and is in play, and there's certain dates that are coming along that will force further regulation and or everybody to convert over to a regulated marketplace by July 1st, 2016.
Okay, which is 1 year to the day of doors open 2015. Or 2014, rather. 2 years to the day.
Right.
Yeah, July 1st, 2014.
No. Yeah, July 1st, you're correct.
Right, yeah. All right, it's been oh my God, it'll be 2 years. Look at that.
Yeah, just passed, didn't it?
Anyway, here we are, December 2015, with Brian Caldwell, Triple C. You've got your business going. You've been in the industry forever, but where did you start? Where does this whole story begin? Where did you grow up?
Grew up in Southern California. Worked for Fortune 500 companies most of my professional career. Did high level sales for them. Managed very large account lists nationally. After 9/11, and then going into the mortgage industry and that bubble bursting, and always kind of having my hand in cannabis. Went into my first dispensary after waiting for 6 hours to get verified because they had to verify my medical authorization. Went in there and realized how much better I could do it, and next day started on that path, and we're 6 years into it now, and I'm sitting here talking with you for the Can Awards.
There we go. All right, that's right. We've got Can Awards tonight.
Yes, we do.
Here in Seattle.
As far as the SoCal thing and the Fortune 500 and then into the real estate boom and bust into cannabis, going back to SoCal, what was it like growing up down there? And, because you're very far away from there weather-wise now, but give us a sense of young Brian Caldwell in Southern California.
Athlete.
Football?
Yes, football. Went to
Linebacker?
No, defensive end. Great growing up in Huntington Beach, being by the beach, the weather, sports. I hate wearing shoes, to be honest with you. It still drives me nuts to this day. But home is where you make it. And I've lived all over the United States, and with all the challenges, I love Washington.
And Washington, for those of us that are not from here, it's not quite as cold as one would think. It's actually kind of temperate here.
It's changed a lot. With whether we believe in global warming or not, I believe we've seen a shift in the weather. It's not as cold. I'm not seeing as much rain. So I'm enjoying it. I'm seeing more of that Southern California weather.
Right. So yeah, there's rain. It is temperate, but it's still Washington State. We are still north.
Yes, we are still north, and there's a huge storm about to come through, and we're all excited for the snow in the mountains. And down here in the lower levels, we got rain and wind right now. But with that comes beautiful areas to play in the mountains. So.
There we go. All right. So you've got a dispensary and you have to sell product there, meaning that you have to have key sales principles, which you would have learned from those Fortune 500 companies, I would imagine, back in the day. What are some of the key sales principles that you learned from selling such big accounts?
You have to be everything to everybody. And honestly, when we looked at the medical marketplace, or as I worked with the legislature, over this last legislative session, their impression of medical cannabis, I didn't necessarily disagree with it as a majority, but there are those operators out there who do things clean, and you go in, it should have that doctor's office, clinic feel, not a bunch of stuff taped up against the wall, not the red, green, and yellow colors. It should be comfortable and inviting and warm to everybody. And even if it's not your style, you should still feel comfortable in there. I think that's number one. I think one of the things that is missed in the industry, and I don't think it's our state or just our state. I think it's various states, is they don't know actually how to set up a proper floor plan, where you're engaging the customers just by the way the floor plan is set up.
How do you mean?
If you go to a grocery store, the end caps are changed almost every 2 to 3 days. There's things that draw your attention to you draw your attention to it. You can't keep that the same. And what everybody's doing is they throw everything up on the walls, or they put it in a stand, and they just accept it to be good, and they never change anything out. I think the other thing too is everybody does a bar style, and I think that's completely wrong. They're not actually dispensing cannabis where they would weigh it out and show people. They're selling packages. So having a bar method, do you go to a bar and you buy a bottle from the bartender and then you walk off? Just that model doesn't make sense to me. If we look at the Apple model, some of the other major retailers, it's either hands-on, which we can't do, obviously, but there's got to be some type of interaction within the store.
Okay, a little bit more engagement or less engagement.
Yes, less engagement. I think some of the recreational shops, it's overwhelming. You walk in and you see all this stuff on the wall, and then you have to take the budtender's opinion, and then you're stuck with a brand. I think everybody needs to consolidate or specialize, if you will. As we convert over, we intend to only have a select few brands. Right now, we only carry roughly 10 gardens in regards to flower, and we've always only carried those brands, those gardens. They're award-winning gardens, but we very, very, very seldom do we stray from those gardens. So we're specialized, and I think as the industry starts to settle, we'll start to see consolidation and settlement, and brands kind of stand out right now, or they will eventually stand out.
You're going to have a very strong brand which actually has its own identity, which actually does relate and engage specific consumers.
Absolutely. I think, there's definitely a difference in the recreational versus medical. Medical is a mature marketplace when you talk about the product available. There's brands that stand out and have been doing things exceptionally well for a long time. They have converted over, and or they still have their foot in medical as well, while we make this transition. When you look at the recreational marketplace, it's just all over the board. The product isn't mature, the product isn't trimmed well, there might not always be the value there. We can get into a whole other discussion on that in the what you can get from the recreational marketplace. But hopefully, by some of the things we're doing to educate the consumer, and I mean we as an industry, what we're doing, eventually the consumer will become educated. They will become aficionados on the recreational side. I think as medical converts over, they'll actually influence the recreational as well, and we'll see better product eventually.
Yeah, across the board.
Absolutely.
All right. So as far as better product is concerned, let's talk about mortgage products, right?
No.
So I mean, I would imagine you're one of those people that did come into the industry full bore after the kind of the crash, so to speak, the economic apocalypse of 2008. Did that help, kind of push you into cannabis?
No, actually, I was just I wasn't doing anything after the mortgage bust. I was trying to find my way, and I think, with the mortgage bust, there's a lot of people that have been very successful, and they had to come to terms with it all being done. And you had to, your ego had to be relaxed a little. It's a long path, and I think, especially for myself, it took me a while to get there. And then, I knew what my passion was. I just hadn't identified it yet. And, like I said, I went into that first dispensary, the only dispensary I ever went to until I was up and running.
The rest is history. Yep. Just real quick, one last question on the mortgage thing. What is your key takeaway from just, kind of having experienced, that craziness?
I've actually been through a few interesting bubbles. I've been through the tech bubble in the Bay Area that did burst. I worked for Morgan Stanley, and I was 6 months in when 9/11 happened, and I was part of the mortgage industry. And what my takeaways from all of those is you don't know what the future holds. You do what you can right now. You reinvest everything to build strength in your business practice, in your processes, just in everything you can. And, I think when we talk specifically about the mortgage industry, don't think it's always going to go up. Don't think it's always going to go forward. Sometimes you have to go backwards, or the model is sometimes wrong, and you have to assume the worst sometimes. You
can apply that to any industry, just like cannabis, I would imagine.
Absolutely. There's many a times I thought it was going to end, crash, be behind bars. We've always done what I feel is correct, and ridden that line and kept our heads down and lifted our heads up when the times were right. And luckily, we've come out unscathed, and we're doing good.
Yeah, exactly. And what are the key lessons? You've been doing it for how long? How long have you been operating?
5 years operational.
So that's a long time. So, and I mean, that's industry veteran. What are the key lessons from cannabis to date?
It's not key lessons. It's how do we grow right now? I think when we look at cannabis, when we look at the industry, it's maturing very quickly, but there's no policies, there's no procedures, nothing's documented, there's no true standards, and that's one of the things I'm realizing. I mean, if a state was to go live, and let's just say CCC wanted to license, somebody wins a license in that state, and CCC wants to go and license them as a retailer. Is there a manual we can give them to show them how to run a dispensary? Sure, there's ones that people make, but have they ever operated a dispensary, or have they ever operated a recreational store, adult use? Having those manuals, having those policies, procedures, standards, it's just where the industry has to go. We have to grow, and with politicians talking about standards, states talking about standards, it's just let's be ahead. Let's be moving ahead of regulations, so it doesn't come and smack us down.
And speaking of regulations, speaking of states, speaking of where things are going, you've been in this since 2010, 5 years. 2016 is going to be a pretty big year as far as states voting, adult use, and otherwise. What are your thoughts of what the industry can do throughout the year to kind of coalesce, if you will? And where do you think we're going to be this time next year after that vote?
I think we'll see another 5 states, either medical and or adult use. And it seems to be some of the national leaders, national organizations for cannabis, what they're looking at. And I completely support that. I hope it moves a little quicker. I don't know if we necessarily want our industry to completely be descheduled or cannabis completely legalized. I think we need to grow, and we need to set standards and be ahead of regulation and become big enough where we could fight off big tobacco, big pharma, should it be descheduled or legalized.
An interesting point, because most of the folks that I talk to absolutely deschedule. No reschedule, because then that makes it more difficult. But you're saying deschedule also makes it difficult, because then all bets are off.
Yeah, I think so. And, I'm definitely for descheduling. I'm definitely for, full legalization.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, yes, that has to be clarified. But if you look at the national organizations and what they're doing, and the map that they have, the roadmap that they have, it's while we want it to move forward quickly, there is a process. And if we don't do it thoughtfully, we will be having to fight off big pharma, big tobacco. We need to grow. We need to be financially strong, and have strong, everything about us be strong.
Yeah.
So,
policies, procedures, etc.
Yes, standards.
Indeed. I did see that Alex Cooley called you. He also texted me. So I want to go ahead and ask 3 final questions just to make sure he gets here tonight.
Okay.
So the 3 final questions are in order. What has most surprised you in cannabis? What has most surprised you in life? And then finally, on the soundtrack of Brian Caldwell's life, what is one song that must be there? So what has most surprised you in cannabis?
Well, every day is a surprise. I'm lucky to be doing what I'm doing every day. I think the biggest surprise would be how many people come into the industry with other industry experience and think that it applies over here, or they come in and they want to bully their way around. Myself, when I came into the industry, I made sure to look at the veterans and look at how things have been done. How can I improve it, but not try to, just stand there, hold my flag, and say I'm doing it this way and everybody else is wrong. We've seen that a lot in Washington, and hopefully people will come around and realize, number 1, respect your elders. Number 2, work with people and learn how things have been done and how to improve them. Not just start over and go on your own path.
And bottom line, I think about this a lot, obviously. We're going to get to a point 10 years from now where whatever happened. And we're going to go ahead and look at the plant and look at the consumer and the patient and see what's what. And a lot of what you just talked about, I think, is going to be in there. The plant will still be the plant. The patient will still be the patient. The consumer for cannabis will still be the consumer for cannabis, no matter what the business people do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hopefully we can keep breeding that plant to make better and better products and better medicine. I really care about the medicine and want to see the medicine get better, especially delivery methods and analyzing the plant a lot more, and the cannabinoids. But we will be looking back on this and maybe even listening to this podcast and realize, everybody's doing everything right and we're playing nicely together, and I look forward to that.
Indeed. I'll see you in the Garden of Eden.
Right.
Okay, what has most surprised you in life?
Being a single father, and loving my daughter unconditionally. I think it's hard to love a woman unconditionally. And
Now, you speak of this woman. How old is your daughter?
18.
How old are you?
Old.
Okay, you don't look that old. 18. You have an 18-year-old daughter.
And she, I'm surprised I'm able to handle what I handle with her on a daily basis. And I still do handle her, but like I said, I love her unconditionally, and realizing that I do love her unconditionally has been a surprise. I mean, I never really thought I'd get there, and it's blood. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, exactly. And congratulations on that. I can't imagine that that's easy.
It's not easy, especially when she was in high school and I was in cannabis. You can't do this until you're an adult. A lot of her friends are, and I understand what kids do, and I told her she cannot be part of that. She has to stay away from it. We're high profile. If she gets caught with anything, it would just probably be worse than ever because of what I do. The contradiction just in itself, don't do this, but I do this.
Yeah.
It's a challenge for a kid to understand. I think, as adults we can understand it, but
Did that communication get through to her? Did she get it, or?
I mean, she does.
All right. So that an 18-year-old daughter, I can't even know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So, what about the soundtrack of your life? What is one song that's got to be on the Brian Caldwell soundtrack?
I was not. I know I listened to the last podcast during the interview, and I wasn't. I was drawing a blank then. So many songs, and our Instagram, we put everything to music. So I'm constantly going through all types of music, and variety's the spice of life. So I don't think one song actually you can pin me down on that.
Okay, I'm just gonna try to. Here's what I'm going to. I'm going to do this because I know that you're a SoCal guy, and I know how old you are roughly.
STP.
What's that?
STP.
Oh, sure, we can do that. He just passed away, Scott Weiland, right?
Yep. He went to. Him and I went to the same high school. He graduated, I believe, a year or two before I started. Yes, he did just pass away. That music was a soundtrack. His music was, outstanding, and the different bands he was with, and it's actually kind of sad, but it's interesting at the same time. It's brought some people together. I've seen a lot of things on social media right now where people from the alma mater are communicating again, and everything kind of, you have to find the positive in everything. At least people are communicating or talking again, and maybe it wouldn't have happened if it hadn't happened to him. So
there we go. We'll go with Plush.
Yeah.
And the positivity of communication.
Absolutely, positivity of communication.
Brian Caldwell, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And there you have Brian Caldwell. As I hope you heard, that's a guy that does care about the industry just as much as he cares about his own dispensary. I'm putting words in his mouth, but I hope he would agree with that statement. There's more than a few folks that share that opinion, and he's certainly one of them.